Blueprint to Your Success Story, Essential Power Words and Workbook, all written by Dr. John A. Chuback, physician and surgeon from New Jersey. I'm Dr. Paul Reeves, your host and moderator, also host of Dr. Paul's Family Talk radio show. Also as part of the panel, Dr. Diane Chuback, CEO of Chuback Medical Group, and Dr. Deborah Waitley, psychologist and author from California. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we take you through the entire book, The Blueprint to Your Success Story, Essential Power Words and Workbook, all written by Dr. John A. Chuback, MD. Greetings and welcome to episode 2 of The Blueprint to Your Success Story, Essential Power Words and Workbook, written by Dr. John A. Chuback, MD, physician surgeon from New Jersey. And now let's welcome him to the show right away. Good morning, Dr. Chuback. How are you today?
Dr. Reeves, good to see you. Nice to see you, Paul. It's great to be back.
You too, anxious to get going. And also with us from California, psychologist and author, Dr. Deborah Waitley. Good morning, Deborah. How are you today?
Good morning, Paul. Good morning, John. Nice to be with you too, and all of you.
All right. Of course, I just said good morning, didn't I? They could be listening to this in the middle of the night or at night, but whenever you're listening to it out there, it was morning for us when we recorded this. How's that sound for a plan?
Absolutely true.
All right, Dr. Chuback, why don't you take over right away? You wanted to get into some quotes at the beginning of your book and also a definition of the word word. Why don't you take it from there?
Yes. Forgive me for looking off to the side a little bit here where I have the manuscript. For those of you who didn't hear the introductory podcast, I would encourage you all to go back and listen to that for a lot of background information about the program and the book, The Blueprint to Your Success Story, which will be coming out in a few months. And this is really a prelude program to really introduce it to the public, and hopefully everyone will enjoy it and learn something from it. I begin the book with 4 quotes, which I think are worth discussing. There's one by Jean-Baptiste Girard, who said, "By words we learn thoughts, and by thoughts we learn life." And I love that quote. And again, the introductory program we did, I think really touched so much on that. The idea that thoughts and words are connected, thinking and language are so intimately connected. And one of the things, I went back and listened to our program, and one of the things that Deborah had said that I thought was so great, and I mentioned in that radio show, was something along the lines, Deborah, you can correct me if I have this wrong, but something about living the words, right?
Yes.
Living the words.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so that brings that all together. By words we learn thoughts, and by thoughts we learn life. So he's implying that you're living those words. Right?
That's right.
I think that's great. Do either of you have any thoughts on that quote before we move to the next one?
Well, just as you said, John, it's bringing these words to life, to our life, and being able to capture the energy within ourselves so that we can truly live those words instead of just thinking the words, we're living them. Yeah, I love that.
And I think that goes back actually to something that Paul and I have been exploring in my other book, Make Your Own Damn Cheese, that Deborah knows very well also, that this concept that thoughts are things, and that you become what you think about most of the time, that's so much of the essence of this material, is that you become what you think about. And since we think in words and in pictures, it gives you the power to become an architect of your own life, and through words and through thoughts and through the imagination, be able to create the kind of life that you'd really like to live. And that's the essence of the Blueprint book. The idea of building a novel with you as the main character, and creating the setting and creating the plot and creating the other characters that you'd like to experience that epic novel with you. So it all ties together beautifully. What do you think, Paul?
Very much the same thing. And of course, being in the field of education forever, I probably had more exposure to this than the average person on the street. But when you increase your vocabulary, like you said in the quote, you increase your thoughts and then you increase your way of looking at life, and it expounds on everything. I remember very clearly writing one memo to the staff. I wrote memos all the time, but one particular memo, I put in the words, and these are not big words. I wasn't even thinking that these are impressive words when I wrote them. The word shenanigans and the word nefarious. Had to do with
Two great words.
had something to do with student discipline, student behavior, a letter to the staff. That was part of the letter. And the best English teacher I had in the school, and she was top of the lines, and she's retired now, but she was top of the line. She came in and said, "What did you use words like that for?" And I said, "Well, which ones?" And I didn't even know what she was talking about. She said, "Well, shenanigans and nefarious." I said, "Well, those are fairly common words." She goes, "Oh, not around here. We don't really speak that way." She goes, "But I like it, and I'm going to
Right.
incorporate them in my lessons. And the more you write memos with words like that, I think the more growth there will be with the staff." And she was right. There were. And so from that point on, that's 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, when I wrote memos, I personally, purposely would put in words that maybe they weren't using every day or maybe they'd never heard of at all, to get them to and go to a dictionary or ask questions. And one time intentionally, just to be a wise guy, I wrote a memo with as many 10 syllable words as I could find. I'm exaggerating, but as many big words as I could find. And half the staff came rushing down, with dictionaries, and we ended up having a pretty big discussion about it. But by learning all those new words, it increased their way of, their thoughts got bigger. And just like the quote says, they were able to look at life much differently. And that's basically the essence of the quote, right?
Yeah,
That's
I think
great.
on this program we'll probably be up to some nefarious shenanigans at some point together.
Well, we
I
sure
wouldn't be
hope so.
surprised. We hope so. But it also reminds me of something that I either read or heard along the way in studying this personal development material. Now, how accurate this is, I don't know, but I doubt that it's very far off. And nevertheless, the idea is important. I read that a study was done that showed in some inner city populations, um, where the educational system has not been strong, that the functional vocabulary of many individuals can be limited to as many as 400 words, or as few as 400 words, I should say.
Hmm.
And if you're really functioning with a 400 word vocabulary, not that people may not know more words than that, but they don't, as this teacher was implying to Paul, don't necessarily utilize them,
Right.
because they don't come up in day-to-day conversation, because the conversation is so redundant. um, what's for breakfast? How was work? This,
Right.
these kinds of almost programmatic conversations that many of us have, that are sort of the old movie with Bill Murray, Groundhog Day. It's sort of the same day over and over. So the conversation becomes very redundant. Um, but if that's true, then you could see how it could limit the kind of thinking that the people are doing, and the kind of goal setting that they might be involved in. And um, that's why I think vocabulary, again, is just so valuable, so important. And I hope we're sharing a success vocabulary with our listeners, um, and with one another in this book and in this process and project.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to the next quote from Socrates. He said, "The beginning of wisdom is the definition of terms." I mean, that's right up my alley. We talked about this in the
That's it.
previous program, but it's everything. I think, especially professionally, or maybe not especially, but certainly professionally, if you don't have a really thorough understanding of definition of terms, it's very difficult to call yourself an expert in any given field. Wouldn't you think?
Yes, and
Right.
I think what this brings up for me is, and this word is capitalized, definition. The beginning of wisdom is the definition of terms. And in order to be successful or live a life that we want to live and have it be fulfilling, we have to know what our own definition is for our life. And that's what this process is all about, putting that meaning around that word, and the words can open us up to that, but really defining that, honing in on what does this mean for me. So it's that awareness, I think, is the first step in this. First step to wisdom is defining through awareness.
Well,
Absolutely.
even in your you talked about this on a previous show, John. Uh, in the operating room, when you're operating as a surgeon, you have other people helping you, other physicians, nurses, whatever you had in there. They had to be fully aware of the vocabulary that you were going to use. If you said, "Hand me a blank,"
Mm,
they had to know what blank was. Now, I wouldn't know if I walked in there to help you. I would fail miserably because I don't know the words. So my thoughts have not been expounded, and so on and so forth. But people who assisted you in surgery did because they had to, as well as you had to at one point too. You didn't know many of the words that you now use freely and with regularity at one time, but now you do because you learned the words and now you're able to navigate through the profession successfully because of it, right?
Absolutely. It's funny that you bring that up. And as you said it, it sparked a list of words and names in my mind. If so, for example, if I were to say to you, Kelly, Coker, Alice, Wheatlanner, Army, Navy, you'd have no idea what I'm talking about. But if I put my hand out in an operating room and I say Alice, I'm getting an Alice clamp. If I say Coker, I'm getting a Coker clamp. If I say Wheatlanner, a Wheatlanner retractor, a handheld spreader. If I say Army Navy, they know that it's a double-sided right angle retractor.
Okay.
So these are terms that if you want to be a surgeon, certainly, but even if you want to be a scrub tech or a OR nurse who's going to scrub in the operative field, oh, that's a huge part of your training. You look at this gigantic table filled with surgical instruments, and each one has a name, and it has to be instantaneous because there are moments where you need that right away. You put your hand out and you say the name, and boom, it's in your hand, and then you're off to the races. So um, essential
mm-hmm.
essential to
Yeah.
know that terminology.
No, it creates a common understanding amongst a group of people, and you can't be successful unless you learn how to work with others and work together. So you need to have that common understanding and define the words you're using so everybody's on the same page.
Correct. It's a community,
Mm-hmm.
and within that microcosmic community, within that setting, we're speaking a foreign language. A
That's
visitor
right.
comes to the room to watch, and you know patients will say that too. That's why physicians, as part, I think, in being a really capable and competent physician, you have to be able to translate medical language into common English language, so, because otherwise, if you're speaking in your jargon, in the vernacular of a surgeon, the patient typically is nodding and agreeing and so forth, and then they walk out and they say, "I have no idea what he said,"
Yeah.
and that's a major problem, communication, and we see that time and time again, and it can lead to a lot of problems
Sure.
in medical practice and surgical practice if the surgeon or the healthcare provider, nurse, technologist, technician, et cetera, is not acutely aware of that situation. um, you can have a major communication gap, which can lead to um, problems, even medical legal problems, et cetera. So
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that he was planning to remove one of my organs.
Yeah.
If you say,
Right.
"We're going to do a cholecystectomy," he says, "Okay," but I didn't know he was going to take my gallbladder out. Well, that's what it means, you know. In fact, to that point, we get off. I don't know if it's off topic, but when I was a resident, I remember I was a first year resident. We had a very capable chief resident, and she was running the clinic service, and we had a woman who needed to have her gallbladder out. And so, you're taught at that level of training that it's very important that you explain to a patient fully what what they're going to have done, what their problem is, and what needs to be done, because it's their body and it's obviously their right to, you know, be made aware of what their illness is and what the treatment is and what you plan to do to them. So this chief resident, this young surgeon, she did just a phenomenal job explaining to this woman what was wrong with her gallbladder, why it had to come out, and how that was going to be done, and so forth. It was being done electively. So we were in the clinic talking about whatever it was. Next Tuesday, you'll come in and we'll remove your gallbladder. And she went through the whole thing about the anatomy of the gallbladder and where it is in the body and the different ducts and so forth, and how that's done through the belly button and blah 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 blah. And then what you're also trained to do is say, now, do you have any questions for me? And the patient said, I only have one question, doctor. And she said, what is that? She said, after you take my gallbladder out, how am I going to pee? So she obviously thought we were talking about her urinary bladder,
Right.
which is completely different from the gallbladder.
Right.
And then kind of we were all scratching our heads saying, wow, we just gave this really, really thorough explanation of the gallbladder, its function, what's wrong with it, how it comes out. And we're not communicating.
Right.
So we had to kind of start over from scratch. But I'll never forget that. It was a great learning lesson for me because there was just too much knowledge that the patient didn't have, that in a 10 or 15-minute explanation, it was almost impossible to make up that gap or that chasm.
Yeah.
Right. Now that explanation probably would have gotten you an A+ had it been a medical school
Right.
class, right?
Oh, you would have
That's
passed the
right.
oral board exam for sure.
There you go.
But that's why you're supposed to in court, I guess, have a jury of your peers.
Right.
People. If you're accusing a corn farmer of something, you should bring corn farmers to try the case, not dairy farmers, I
Right.
guess,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. But anyhow, so language is so important. How about Confucius? Confucius said, without knowing the force of words, it's impossible to know more.
So there it is.
Deborah, what do you think about that?
I'd like to hear more what Confucius means by that.
Yeah, I mean, I I think one of the interpretations, and it's kind of redundant on our part, is just saying if now he uses the word force, power, the power of words. Um, it's impossible to know more. But I think that goes back to what I put forth last time as an idea, that it's impossible to think beyond the limit of your vocabulary.
Right.
I think that's
That's true.
I think
So
that's an astounding idea.
by saying the force of words, it prompts you, urges you to want to know more, right? And go further. So you won't do that unless you understand how powerful they can be. Is that
Yeah.
what he's saying? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that they can be powerful in a lot of ways. I mean, they can be powerful. Hopefully, the words in this book are powerful in the sense that they're motivational, they're
I
inspirational,
think so.
but they can also be very hurtful, powerful, and forceful in
Mhm.
that way. They can be destructive. You know, I think words probably motivate armies to go to battle, to go to war. Words probably lead to a lot of hurt feelings and injured relationships. Um, so
And
just a
whether
concept.
they're, and I wanted to add whether a word is quote unquote positive or negative, it's still a driving force for action or to learn more. So I'm thinking about fear motivation, desire motivation. Like a word that's negative could also be very empowering because you're motivated to not be that way and to get out of that and to drive forward. So I was thinking that there's some interesting words that, well, Paul brought up early, shenanigans and nefarious. So that, conjures up all these images of it, that they don't necessarily all need to be positive at first glance. They could, whatever instills that energy in you to become better and learn more. I think it's power there too.
Yeah, you touch on something there. I mean, you sparked in me again one of these third mind moments. A related idea. Again, a little bit off topic, but in the work that we do generally together and discuss the power in the work that we do on the mind and the conscious mind as it relates to the subconscious mind. One of the things that has been fundamental teaching of this material for many years, which I really love and I've embraced, and was new to me when I was a neophyte, when I was a new student in this realm and in this genre, is the idea that the subconscious mind doesn't understand negatives. That's one way of putting it, I guess. So in other words, just a concrete example. If you want to reprogram the subconscious, you should not say, I don't want to be fat anymore.
Okay.
The teaching is, the theory is, that when you say, I don't want to be fat anymore, what all the subconscious really gets out of that is I, fat.
Yeah.
That's the take home message. I'm fat. Even though you're saying don't want to be anymore, the subconscious doesn't really know what to do with that. So the teaching is you should say, I am thin. And not even I wish to be thin, because it doesn't understand the future tense. It doesn't understand the past tense. It only thinks in the positive present tense. So if you're
The
trying to,
conscious mind or the
the
unconscious mind?
the unconscious, the subconscious mind. The conscious mind can think in any tense and so forth, whatever. And you think you're doing a good job by saying, I don't want to be fat anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to, drink anymore. I don't want to smoke anymore. But the teaching has been that a much more effective way of retraining the subconscious mind is to speak in the positive present. So to say, I am a non-smoker. I am thin. I am fit. I am smart. I am capable. Not, I'm sick and tired of being an idiot. I'm sick and tired of being stupid. I'm sick and tired of being uneducated. Because the messaging to the subconscious mind is that I'm stupid, I'm uneducated, I'm fat, I'm a smoker. So it's kind of off topic here, but it is one of the things I've thought a lot about in the power of that. The idea that to retrain the subconscious mind, you should really be thinking in positive terms and present tense. Even if some of the teachers would say that you could even put a future date on it, but you should say it in the present tense. So in other words, you may say, I am, let's say 185 pounds, if that's your weight goal. I am 185 pounds on June 25th, 2025. I am. So that's the language of the subconscious mind, is the positive present tense. You wouldn't want to say, I'm no longer fat on June 25th, 2025.
So,
Because
John,
it's associating yourself with the fatness, or
right.
it's reinforcing the paradigm that you're already living in.
So it sounds like what you're talking about, and I know this has been a core foundational tenet of the self-development movement and motivational field. So what you're saying is that that's how we want to rewire, retrain our conscious minds. We want to program the unconscious to be aligned with what we desire in our conscious life, right? The language of the unconscious, however, contains the negative and the positive. We want to put a label on that. So the unconscious can be thinking, but I am fat. I'm fat. It's our conscious mind that wants to change that label to say, no, I'm not fat. I'm thin, right? So it's, to a certain extent, it's bringing that out of the unconscious and transforming it in with the conscious mind. But the unconscious is full of all kinds of thoughts and feelings and emotions that are not always what we want them to be. So
Well,
it's kind of, there has to be some embracing of that fatness and transforming it to our desired goal, thinness. So the unconscious doesn't think in positive terms all the time. That's what I wanted to bring
well,
up. Otherwise, we're in
yeah,
a fight. We're in a struggle.
Right. I think it's a fascinating discussion. And again, look, this is theory.
Right.
These are constructs and these are ideas. I don't think that any of this is certainly proven in any kind of um, neuroanatomical, neurochemical, neuroelectrical way. This is, the teaching of the mind and positive psychology. So these are theories, but the theory would say that the subconscious mind um, doesn't have feelings about anything. It's amoral. It doesn't care. It doesn't see fat as bad or thin as good or poverty as bad or disease as bad or illness as
Right.
bad. It is what it is.
And those are
Cancer is
labels
cancer.
we're
And
putting those labels on the
th-
unconscious.
those are conscious mind labels.
Exactly.
Those are interpretive
Yeah.
labels of the conscious mind. The
Right.
subconscious mind is like the fertile soil in the garden. It
Yeah.
doesn't care what you plant there. It doesn't prefer sweet corn to nightshade, a deadly poison. It will bring forth either in equal abundance. And if you don't, so in that way, the unconscious, the subconscious mind is really quite beautiful because it's totally non-judgmental. It's amoral. It doesn't know right from wrong, truth from fiction,
Mhm.
um, good from bad. It doesn't function in that way. It will simply bring forth um, whatever you plant
Yeah.
there. So the idea is to try to be very, very careful in avoiding in your conscious thoughts negative terms,
Right.
like what we consider to be negative: fat, lazy, stupid, uneducated, unmotivated, um, poor, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're trying to, in a sense, fool the subconscious mind into adopting new beliefs, new paradigms, a new self concept, then you should be very careful in choosing positive terminology, not negative terminology, not a negative of negative. Say, I
Mhm.
don't want to be fat. I don't want to be poor. I don't want to be broke anymore. I don't want to be homeless anymore. You say, I live in a beautiful home.
Right.
I am fit and healthy. I am well. I am happy. I am educated.
Mhm.
You know, so it's that's those are two of the most powerful words. I am.
I am. Yeah.
Right.
And John, I love your analogy or your labeling the unconscious as fertile soil, like it's the soil. And what you just said. So these words, everything we're talking about in this show, we can plant into that soil as seeds in order to grow into an unconscious mind that can continue to reinforce our conscious positive self-concept.
That's
It's
the essence
it's
of the whole
perfect.
book. That's
Yeah.
the essence of the whole practice. In fact, it comes around very beautifully to the work that your father, Dennis Waitley, did in his incredible program, Seeds of Greatness.
Yeah.
What it teaches is that you can plant seeds of greatness in your subconscious mind, and
Hmm.
your subconscious mind has no choice. It's a what's the proper way of putting it? It's a faithful servant. It has no choice but to bring forth what is planted there. So, um, recently I watched the movie The Secret again, which that's a whole other subject. We could talk about the pros and cons of that movie. Overall, I think it was a great program that really brought a lot of awareness to the public about the mind. Um, but one of the guests on that program says, um, the subconscious mind behaves like Aladdin's lamp. He says, your wish is my command. Your wish is my command. The wish of the conscious mind, when repetitively um, thought of or even spoken, which is powerful too, the spoken word out loud, as opposed
Hmm.
to the inner voice, both are powerful. If you say that over and over and again, I'm a fat idiot, I'm a lazy slob, I'm a lazy slob, I'm a lazy slob, the subconscious mind says, your wish is my command.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to think of yourself as a lazy slob and go out and run a marathon.
That's
It's hard to think of yourself as an idiot and go become a cardiac surgeon.
right.
You have to think of yourself as intelligent and educable first, and then the subconscious mind will act as a faithful friend or servant.
Absolutely.
Your wish is my command. So that's what the genie says to Aladdin after rubbing the lamp, and the genie comes forth and he says to Aladdin, "Your wish is my command." And that's how he puts it in that movie so beautifully. The subconscious mind says, "Your wish is my command." And so, getting back to your father's work in Seeds of Greatness, if you plant seeds of greatness in the subconscious mind, it has no choice to bring that forth for you. But here's the part that people must be cautious of and aware of. If you are not, if you are not consciously and purposefully planting seeds of greatness in your subconscious mind, it is not that the garden will remain empty and bring forth nothing. What happens is that there are what they refer to as weed seeds that naturally will find their way into the garden of your beautiful subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind, as a faithful servant, will bring those weeds forth just as abundantly as it would bring forth the seeds of greatness. So you won't wind up with an empty garden, just like in the real world. If you abandon a lot, even in the inner city, where you have concrete and bricks and mortar and buildings and steel and glass and so forth, if you leave an abandoned lot between two skyscrapers, in no time you'll see lots of weeds growing there. And you say, where did these weeds come from? Where on earth? Who planted these seeds? Nobody planted the seeds. The wind blows them there, the birds drop them there, et cetera, et cetera. In your subconscious mind works exactly the same way. If you're not using positive words in your thoughts and in your conversation on a daily basis, the mind will collect negative seeds. It's miraculous why that happens, why it doesn't find,
Oh, I know. Well,
beautiful seeds, but it doesn't.
and it brings up the point that through these words and expanding our whole self-concept in a positive way, we have to continue to nurture and nourish that garden, because like you said, the weeds of society and others and all these influences that come in are going to continue to plant negative seeds, and the weeds are going to grow up whether we keep pulling them out, getting to the roots. It's a constant process. So herein lies that constant nourishing through the words we speak have that power to do that.
Didn't you do that, John? I remember you telling me. I don't remember if you actually did this or if you thought about it or learned it after the fact. But and I'm probably way off on the dates. But let's say it's January 1st, 1995. Instead of saying I'm going to be a surgeon on January 1st of 2000, you said on January 1st of 95, said, okay, it's January 1st, 2000. I am a surgeon. Do I have that
Yes.
correct? Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
Well, yes. I
Yeah.
mean, you may not say it to other people because they'll think that you're. I mean,
Right.
not that they're going to think that
Right. Right.
Jim Rohn used to say, they'll take you away to a safe place, but not that they're going to think you're crazy, but they may think you're arrogant. So I have a friend um, that I grew up with who's a very successful surgeon today, and he's been my friend since I was born. He's a few years older than me,
Mhm.
and he took a lot of heat because when he was in high school and he got his first car, his mother happened to be a physician, and it was his dream to become a vascular surgeon, which he did. Um, but that was his dream even at that time. And because his mother was an MD, um, when when he got his first car in high school, she was able to get him MD plates, and he put, I won't say his name,
Yeah.
but he put his name, his first name, and MD on those plates, and he drove that car,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he took a lot of heat from people.
Of course.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
what was so beautiful about it is he didn't care
Right.
because he was living the role of the person that he wanted to become in the present.
Yeah.
And despite that he took some ribbing from friends and so forth, and there were some people who didn't like that, didn't think it was really appropriate for him to do that, quite frankly. Um, it put a lot of pressure on him to live up to that dream because he wasn't going to be made a fool of.
You're right.
I mean,
Right.
that would be really bad, right? If he had driven the car with the plates and then he didn't fulfill his dream. So my point is that he really programmed his subconscious mind that I'm going to be a physician and I'm going to be a vascular surgeon, and he did that, and he did it very successfully, very successfully at every stage. He never had any trouble getting into medical school, getting to surgical residency. He has had a very successful practice, but he tricked his subconscious mind very, very consciously, very purposefully.
Right.
And he didn't care who had to be around to watch that process, but he made up his mind at 17 that he would be a vascular surgeon at 33.
Yeah.
John, and
it worked like unadulterated magic.
I love this story. And you said he was living the role of the surgeon before he was the surgeon. So there's something about bringing back that living the word. So you could put up on your wall, I am a surgeon, or I am going to be a surgeon. It's not enough. That plants the seed, but it's that nurturing, that goal, that dream, that aspiration, which is a word we're going to be talking about. It's the first word in your book. It's, what does a surgeon mean to me, and starting to live that word through all his actions and activities, getting him closer to becoming that, because it's not enough to just say, I am a surgeon. I'm going to be a surgeon, right? There's a whole lot of steps that go into that. And it's a process.
It's a process, but it begins with the dream, just like our book. And it begins with the dream and the belief that you see, one of the things that Bob Proctor has been a great proponent of, and is so powerful and it's so simple, is the idea of the goal card. That one should carry a card in their pocket every single day with their goal written on it. But the way Proctor suggested writing it is so beautiful. He says, I am so happy and grateful now that I ... I am so happy and grateful now that I am a surgeon. Now you're 17
Right.
and you put that card in your pocket. And what Proctor taught was so, now this is a very interesting sort of neuropsychology, psychobiology, psychosomatic process. He said, you know what's written on the card, okay? And so when you reach in your pocket to get your car keys and you touch the card, you don't have to take the card out and read it. You know what's written on the card, but you touch the card. And when your hand touches the card, it sends, Proctor used to describe it as a light message, but it's an electrochemical message going up the peripheral nervous system through the axon of the peripheral nerve to the central nervous system. And you say, I know what that card says. It says, I am a surgeon. I am so happy and grateful now that I am a surgeon. I am so happy and grateful now that I'm 185 pounds. I am so happy and grateful now that I earn $150,000 per year. I know what the card says. I don't have to take it out and read it. But what he said was, each and every time that you touch that card, or you even think, oh yeah, I have the card in my pocket, you get that message again. And that message repeats throughout the day in your conscious mind, and that gives it the opportunity to permeate the psychic barrier and be implanted or impressed upon the subconscious mind. Sometimes they refer to the conscious mind as the male mind and the subconscious mind as the female mind. They say the thinking, the conscious thinking, impregnates the subconscious mind by repetitive thinking. You impregnate the subconscious mind with that self-concept. I am a surgeon. So when my friend, every time he came out to see his car, he had to see the license plate.
Right.
So he saw the license plate. That's me. Okay. That's me. You come to the front of the car. In New Jersey, we have plates in the front and the back. So you come to the back of the car, you see it. You come to the front of the car, you see it. Every time you get in the car, you see it. You might have friends who say, "What's with that license plate?" You think about it again. Even when they're mocking you, they're reminding you of the plate, and the plate is reinforcing who you are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
So
also, when you said Bob Proctor brought in, I am a surgeon and I'm feeling happy and satisfied and fulfilled. So you're bringing in the emotions to reinforce and nourish that word. You have, and
yeah,
then we know our minds. They're going to go, we're going to continue to bring in all these positive reinforcements around what it means to be a surgeon to us, what it feels like, how others are going to respond, we're going to be able to do and accomplish. So it just grows and expands from there. So without knowing the force of words, right, it's impossible to know more. Coming back to that quote.
yes, you're right. Proctor said his mantra was, "I am so happy and grateful now
Great.
that."
Yes.
Now that. So he's thinking in the present tense. Now that I am so happy and grateful. Now that I am a surgeon. Now the guy's only 17 years old. He's far from being a surgeon, but in his mind, he's a surgeon. In his mind, you see Arnold Schwarzenegger, the bodybuilder, governor, businessman, etc., actor. He would tell you. I've watched many of his interviews. He saw himself with that physique before the physique had manifested itself in the material world. He saw it in his mind. I want my shoulders to look like this. I want my biceps to look like this. I want my waist to look like this. He had the visual image in the mind, and then the belief in the subconscious mind, and that subconscious self-concept then leads to the habitual behavior that brings the result. So it's a fascinating concept, and I think it's valuable to focus on the positivity. Not to. It's hard for the person who says, "I don't want to be a 98-pound weakling
Yeah.
anymore," to become Mr. Olympia. Although they have the
Right.
same ambition, but you but but the subconscious mind keeps hearing 98-pound weakling. I am a 98-pound weakling. It doesn't hear I don't want to be anymore. It doesn't. It again, maybe that's not true. Maybe it's just a theory, but I have certainly bought into it. I think you're probably better off hedging your bets and saying, "I am Mr. Olympia in 2025," if that's your goal, rather than saying, "I'm no longer a 98-pound weakling in 2025."
Yes.
That's
I agree.
that's the teaching. So again, think about the physical metaphor. If you want to grow corn,
Right.
just plant corn seeds.
Right.
Don't say, "I don't want potatoes in this field." You can't not plant potatoes, right? That won't bring you corn. I mean, in that regard, it's pretty concrete and pretty simple. If you want to grow corn, plant corn. If you want to grow potatoes, plant
Mm-hmm.
potatoes. To
And you can
give your
certainly
subconscious
start,
mind what you want, but not
right.
what you don't want.
You can certainly start with, I have the field in front of me. It's potatoes. I don't want potatoes. I want to plant corn. So sometimes that dissatisfaction can be the motivator to change. And then you flip it to say, I want corn instead. And you focus on the corn, right? But that initial, there's potatoes here. I don't want them. That could come out to then fuel you towards what you do want. What you don't want can sometimes be fuel. And then you continue to reinforce with what you do want. Just saying it's like a little
It's
circle.
You have to be very cautious about it.
Yes, you
I
do.
think.
Yes, you do.
I think sometimes when we think we're motivating ourselves with negative terminology, it may feel that way in the conscious thinking mind. But again, the teaching is, I can't guarantee that it's correct or it's true, but the teaching is that your subconscious mind, it's not thinking the way your thinking mind is thinking. It's not structured the same way. It doesn't function the same way. And by trying to motivate somebody with negativity, um, it's not a very effective tool. I remember your father in Psychology of Winning giving the example of, saying, you know, you little pigs, clean up your room. Um, that's that's not the most effective way of motivating children to clean the room, because they're getting reinforced with the thing, that I'm a little pig. So if I'm a little pig, I should have a
Yeah,
messy room.
absolutely. So I guess we're talking about like a starting point and then the reinforcement, right? So it starts with the present position of where you are and where you want to go. So where you are, you're not satisfied with. So there is a dissatisfaction which motivates you to change. So you simply replace the potatoes with the corn. You actually visualize it. You actually physically, you start to feel that. You start to put yourself in that, and you forget about the potatoes, or you forget about the little pigs that don't clean your room. You're not that anymore. But it's a process. But it started with your room was messy. You see what I'm saying? I'm just saying we want to look at that.
There's no question that the conscious mind is going to be aware of the negative circumstance. What what I'm what I'm sharing in terms of this material and this philosophy is that the most effective way, the most expedient way of changing the given circumstances is to focus on the positive outcome which one desires, rather than reinforcing the
Absolutely.
negative circumstance which currently exists. So,
Absolutely. I
um,
agree.
the right, and so the we know about this, just in child psychology, that they talk about, positive reinforcement,
Right.
not negative reinforcement,
Mm-hmm.
not punishment for, look at what a bad job you've done, right? You're a bad boy, you're a bad girl. Look at how messy your writing is, as opposed to saying, um, oh, that looks pretty good, and I think that it could be even better. Let's
Mm-hmm.
see if we can make it better. So, um, it's, again, I think that this the proof is in the pudding, so to speak, that most of us have been raised and trained to think in the self-deprecating, negative, self demeaning, punishing way. That I don't like who I am, I don't like the way it is, I don't accept myself for who I am, and I want to change this, you know, bad, incompetent, incapable, fat, lazy, impoverished person to become something better. Most of us, that's the stance we're taking, in the direction we're coming from, and the results haven't been good, right? I mean, people don't like being fat, but we live in a nation with a major obesity epidemic, um, because people keep thinking, I'm such a fat pig, I hate being fat, I'm such a fatso, and so on and so forth. It's very unnatural in our culture, um, for a person who's overweight to look in the mirror and say, I'm beautiful, I'm thin, I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm fit. You say, well, it doesn't make sense. You're not being honest with yourself. You're just lying to yourself. That's right. You're lying to your you're using, once you understand how this material works, this is a philosophy, this is a concept, but if you believe in it, you look in the mirror and you say, I am slim, trim, fit, and healthy, even though that's not what you're seeing in the physical reflection, because you want to reprogram the subconscious belief system and self concept. And then with time, you have the greatest chance of seeing that reflected in the mirror. But it has to begin in the mind. The mirror will become a reflection of the subconscious self concept. And the only way to change that self concept is through trickery. Really, it's by reprogramming that subconscious self concept with a new positive self image. The old self image, reinforcing the old self image in a deprecating, self deprecating manner, will not will not work.
No, I agree. It will not work. And if we're using fatness, being fat and then wanting to be thin, so there's something about being able to embrace the fatness and loving yourself for who you are right now, accepting this is where I am, and I then deciding where you want to go. So look at our whole society. We're not trying, it used to be we tried to change everyone and want to make them thin because that was considered a negative self-concept. So what I'm saying is there's something about bringing up the unconscious or looking at where we are, embracing it somehow, still loving ourselves for those flaws and weaknesses, and then desiring to make a change, but not just that's bad, this is good kind of thing.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
The semi-humorous twist to all of this is before we started, we thought we'd get through 5 definitions and the
There's
first
no way.
5 words.
Yeah.
And I remember, Deborah said, well, we'll never get through 5 words. How about 3? Well, we haven't gotten to any yet, have we? We're not even done with the
No,
definition.
we're not. We're not even through all
This
the
is
quotes
terrible.
yet. We're not through all the quotes.
That's exactly right.
Let's go to
We
the
haven't
next
even
one.
we haven't even gotten to what the word means. What the
Exactly.
word means. So
Shall we go
that's okay.
forward?
Yeah, go ahead, John. How about
Let's
your
go
definition?
forward.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so this is Rumi, who said, silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation. So
You really want to try to talk about that in
no,
5 minutes?
I can't. We can't unroof that. That's just
That's a
really
whole
deep.
series of podcasts.
Yeah.
That's right. That's a course in philosophy.
We have 8.5 minutes. Go for it. No,
Forget it. No, I'm moving on.
Oh, good, Paul. We have 8 minutes
Let's
instead
just
of
leave
5.
it to
That's
that's
great.
a beautiful use of language. That's just a very heavy quote. But we'll go past. We'll go to the most concrete one now,
All right.
which is not a quote, but it's a definition, and that's where all of our definitions begin, with the definition of the word which is defined as a sound or combination of sounds that has a meaning and is spoken or written. So that's the real beginning of our journey with the word, a sound or combination of sounds that has a meaning, whether spoken or written. Any
There you
comments
go.
on that, guys, or we're
Yeah,
okay?
no, that was
All right.
perfect.
We're good with that. We're good with that
Good.
definition, John.
Great.
Yeah.
So we go into section 1, using your dream to develop the main character.
Okay.
And you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to read these 2 paragraphs quickly for our audience to get them into how this book works. So this is section 1, using your dream to develop your main character, or the main character, which is you. You're the main character of this epic novel, of this beautiful novel that we're going to be writing together about you. What words would you use to describe yourself as the character in your dream? Are you creative, dependable, courageous? What is your dream? Be honest. This is your workbook. So be free to express yourself. Who do you truly want to be? What do you honestly want to do? In the spaces provided at the end of each word entry, go all out and create your new self. Bonus, if you have these attributes already, write those down too. Craft the individual you want to be using the traits you would need to possess to make these dreams of yours a reality. Where do you see yourself in 5, 10 years? Create the ideal you. Use extra paper if necessary. You're going to want more paper. Be truthful and open, and dream big. Okay, let's get started. So that's how we start. And again, I think that this reinforces the very spirited conversation that we just had, which is use positive words, to build this character. Courageous, dependable, creative. I think those are the kinds of words you want to use in crafting this hero, which is the main character, which is you.
Which is you. Yeah. I love this. I mean, this is every person's story, every man's story, every woman's story, right? It's our mythic journey through life. It's like the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell talked about the hero's journey. So you're right. The hero's journey usually starts with some adversity, or here I am. Once upon a time, there was me, and I started out this way. And I aspired, which is this word, to be here, to go out and seek fortune or solve a problem or become this. And I met adversity along the way. And I used, like you said, used these seeds of greatness to provide me the fuel and the tools that I needed along the way to make that journey happen. So that's what these words can be, right? But it is, I love what you said, the hero or heroine story. That's what the blueprint is.
Right. And the essence is, as Earl Schoaf taught Jim Rohn many, many years ago, they're both gone now, but we thank them for their teachings. If you will change, everything will change for you. So if we want to be that main character of our own epic tale, this incredible story, and we're going to be the hero or the heroine, then we're going to have to change who we are right now, because obviously there are some problems, these stumbling blocks that we talked about last time, and what you're describing as the conflict in the great epic story, and Joseph Campbell and the hero's tale and so forth. So what's the problem now? My weight, my income, where I live, my personal relationships, whatever that is for each one of us, where we see trouble or problem to overcome, this is our opportunity through this process to find answers through great words, through positive thinking, through positive terminology, to become that person, to change so that we can bring that change in our lives.
And that's what I love. You reminded me of Gandhi's quote. It's one of my favorite. Just be the change. Bring these words alive. Be what you want now. Bring it to the present tense. So that's what I love about everything we've been talking about is let's become what we want to be in the now. So we're being the change right now as we speak these words, right?
Well, to follow up on that, now
Uh-oh.
Right in harmony with what you're saying. When you said Gandhi said, "Be the change," my understanding is that there's another great quote from Gandhi. Now, I hope it wasn't inaccurately ascribed to him, but I believe that he said this also, that someone interviewing him asked, basically, what message do you have for the people, Mr. Gandhi, for the world? And he said, I am the message. So if he's saying be the change, right? If he's saying be the change, then he's living that. He's living that. He's imploring us to be the change. And the guy says, what is the message? And he says, I am the message. Right?
Absolutely.
So that's very sort of, Christ-like as well, that concept. But so he's saying, look at me, look at how I live, look at how I speak, look at how I behave, look at what I'm doing, look at what I stand for. That's the message. You're seeing it. Be the change, and he's being the change.
Absolutely.
I think it's fabulous.
I do too. It's really powerful.
And we will have to stop for today. Episode 2, The Blueprint to Your Success Story, Essential Power Words and Workbook, a book written by Dr. John A. Chuback. And our goal was to get 5 words done today. We got 0, but that's because we generated such a wild discussion about the quotes. And we'll begin with the words next time. How's that sound, Dr. Chuback?
That sounds great. The first word is going to be aspire. And as Dr. Whately said, we aspire to get to it next time. And our other great aspiration is to have my beautiful and brilliant wife with us next time. Unfortunately, she could not join us today, but I promise everybody she will be with us next program. And that will make our discussion even more interesting, I think, and more fruitful. So we missed her today, but we look forward to that.
She'll be here next time. All right. Dr. Deborah Whately, author and psychologist from California, thank you very much for being here, and we will see you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. And Dr. Chuback, thank you for putting the show together. And obviously, it's your book, so we will see you next time as well.
Looking forward. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.